Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Tren de Aragua is a word that you did not hear before 2024, but I think you're going to be hearing it for a while. And, add it to your list of cartels, Sinaloa cartel, Zeta cartel, MS-13. Well, this one is the Venezuela flavor. And Texas is not going to wait until we have big problems. We're going to go ahead and do something about it in its infancy. And so your governor, Gov Abbott, announced a new initiative to deal with them. And he came on the WBAP morning show this morning to talk about it. You're going to hear Ernie Brown and Carla Marion both asking him questions. And he's explaining with a little more in depth just exactly what this new initiative is going to do for the state of Texas.
They were actually invited in, imported in. And so this is something that has begun to spread in Texas as well as across the country. This is, for your listeners, the most dangerous international gang that exists. They're violent. They dominate the flow of migrants from South America to Mexico to the United States. And they are treacherous all the way from murder to human trafficking. And once they take hold in a particular area, they just grow and expand and try to take over that area. What I announced yesterday is Texas is cracking down on this Tren de Aragua to make sure they no longer expand in Texas. We arrest them, put them behind bars, and end their presence in the state of Texas.
Now, Mr. Abbott, would a local municipality be able to then not contact ICE, as we see in blue cities kind of all over the place, or is there any kind of recourse to blue cities that intentionally don't turn over these violent criminals so that their immigration status is hidden?
Absolutely, there's a penalty. I signed a law several years ago that bans sanctuary city policies in the state of Texas. If any city, let's say Dallas, for example, refuses to cooperate with ICE, there are penalties already in place. In this coming session, we will be looking to increase those penalties to make sure that we don't have any non-complying cities across Texas.
Where has this gang made a major foothold in the state so far?
So there are several locations across the entire state. Dallas is one. Houston is one. The Rio Grande Valley is another. El Paso is another. We have locations where they have been clearly identified, but other locations where they are suspected. The reason why I say suspected, and this is one of the challenges that we face, usually with criminals, there's some database about their background that identifies who they are. People coming from Venezuela, the country of Venezuela is not providing us any data background. We do know that there have been prisoners in Venezuela who've been let out who have come to the United States. And what we are seeking to do is start from scratch to build a database based upon certain traits and characteristics of these various or vicious TDA gang members, such as types of tattoos, other markings on their bodies, the MO that they use to commit crimes, things like that. So we're having to start from scratch to build this database so that we will be able to more directly identify and target them and arrest them and put them behind bars.
Now, and seemingly these people came in without warning, overwhelming local police departments. Local police departments, Governor Abbott, they're not equipped to handle this sort of thing, are they?
And there are some, like the Dallas Police Department, the large cities are equipped to handle it. However, this is not a local crime in Dallas. This is a statewide crime, and that's exactly why I have established 9 anti-gang centers across the entire state of Texas, ranging from one in Dallas-Fort Worth up to Lubbock, over in Tyler, in El Paso, the Rio Grande, and places in between. These anti-gang centers collaborate at the federal, state, and local level to go after gangs like this. Yesterday, I identified this Tren de Aragua as the number one gang for us to go after. It's the number one priority for these anti-gang centers, and so everybody's on high alert to go after them and to purge them from the state of Texas.
Governor Gov Abbott with us. Are the feds going to help Texas with this problem?
Absolutely. They already are. And so going back to those anti-gang centers, in all of those 9 anti-gang centers across the entire state of Texas, there are multiple different types of law enforcement agencies that work in collaboration with the state of Texas, as well as with local law enforcement officers like those in the Dallas Police Department.
Yes, and this seems very proactive of you taking this step of making the proclamation at the press conference, news conference yesterday, as you did, where we see already, like Colorado, and what a debacle that was when they initially came out all the way up in their upper levels of government to deny that anything was going on.
Well, and so you talk about being proactive. Texas is the first and the only state to come out and take aggressive action like this against Tren de Aragua. We saw what happened in Aurora, Colorado, but we saw that already happen in the state of Texas with the Gateway Hotel in El Paso, Texas. That's an operation where Texas DPS law enforcement officers collaborated with El Paso Police Department officers to disrupt what was going on at the Gateway Hotel and make arrests, some of whom were members or suspected members of Tren de Aragua.
Well, Governor, I got to tell you, this is one of the things I like about you is when you see a problem, you always tackle it head on, and you're doing this, no hesitation, just jumping in and handling it, just like you did with the border. So good to know that this is being taken care of. I'm curious, is there a time frame you think that you can eradicate this?
Listen, we need to understand the magnitude of the problem because, for one, the volume of people coming in from Venezuela, another because of the lack of data that we have. In other words, it's not like they can come in and we can say, oh, you're a gang member, we got to arrest you. We have to build out this database. So this is going to be a long, prolonged process. Tren de Aragua is not going to back off until we start putting them behind bars. We have begun that process, but our goal is to make Texas hostile territory so that these gang members, if they're even thinking about coming to Texas, they're going to face criminal prosecution consequences and take their business elsewhere.
And that was Governor Greg Abbott on the WBAP Morning Show. Today, you heard Ernie Brown and Carla Marion asking the questions there. Your thoughts on Tren de Aragua? Are you worried about this? 800-288-9227. My next guest coming up from the Heritage Foundation is going to talk about some of the policy specifics Greg Abbott's going to be trying for us. And will it work? 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. All right, in the previous segment, you heard from your governor. Thank you. Governor Greg Abbott, who was spelling out his new initiative to fight Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan street gang that's been taking over. You've probably seen some of the videos floating through your social media feeds. What's going on in Aurora, Colorado, and a couple other places. Well, they're here. You've been hearing some reports here and there from the WBAP newsroom about this issue. And then the governor comes out, announces his new big initiative. And the question is, will it work? I don't know. Let's ask Simon Hagenson, who's back on from the Heritage Foundation. How do you feel about this new initiative from Governor Greg Abbott, Simon?
Well, I salute Governor Abbott for doing everything he's done so far with Operation Lone Star and the boys in the Rio Grande and other initiatives to try to pick up the slack from the federal government, which is obviously not doing its job at the border. I think this initiative, this declaration ought to provide some more resources and some more attention and allow Texas to do the law enforcement that is unfortunately necessary because the federal government has opened up the border.
Well, and that's the question. It doesn't seem to matter what Governor Greg Abbott does. Will this ever really be solved without a controlled border?
No, and that's really the root of the problem. Is
right.
You state by state, you can do a lot to try to control crime. I mean, certainly some states do a better job than others, and sanctuary cities are a disaster. But until they actually shut down the flow of people coming in, particularly unvetted young men from countries with super high crime rates and networks of gangsters, then this will never end.
So I appreciate him trying to do this. Is there any concern that these new rules and these new powers could be misused?
Well, any power is capable of being misused, but I think in the right hands, additional tools and additional focus can only do good if it's targeted towards Tren de Aragua, which is a really nasty transnational criminal organization that's responsible for murders, rapes, mass robberies of cell phones, jewelry stores. I mean, had a pretty incredible track record just in the short time that they've been active in the U.S.
So is this going to be an issue that could decide the election? Because I have a feeling that half this country sees all the people coming across the border and they don't care.
Well, I unfortunately, I think they don't see what's happening because it's just not covered by more than half the media. I think, as you say, half the people in the country are really concerned about this. It's been a number one or number two issue for voters, and it is an issue for many Democrats as well. But if you look at the mainstream media, it's just simply not there. The story is vanishingly uncovered, and I think that's a real disservice by the media to voters in this election cycle.
Well, I was liking the idea that all this talk about eating dogs and cats and pets was an object of ridicule right after the debate, but sort of morphed into a powerful exposition of the problems they've been having with illegal immigration, even up in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sideshow in that, it doesn't really matter.
Hang on, Simon, are you getting arrested right now? What did you do?
I'm in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where we have emergency sirens, pretty much around the clock.
Oh, that's weird because they're not known for crime in D.C. That's usually a really chill place. Anyway, go ahead, continue.
I'm sorry, I lost the thread of the question there. Can you just remind me?
Nope, I don't remember what I was asking you. I really don't. I was distracted by the sirens, thought of a joke, and now I just threw the whole conversation overboard. All right, Simon Hankinson. The eating the dogs and cats that brought this to the forefront, and I think that was accidentally being very persuasive to some people and convincing them that immigration needs to be addressed.
Well, look, I think the bottom line is anytime you bring a quarter of a town's population in within a couple of years, and those people are from a completely different culture. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere by a long shot. Their average income is probably about under $1,000 a year.
Yeah, it's about a bag of sand a year.
It's a really, really difficult place to live, and they don't have the luxuries that many of us have gotten used to, like parks and roads and clean water
and toilets. Yeah,
and literally, and toilets. I've lived in countries like that, and so it's going to take a while for them to adjust. And if it was just a couple of families or, a few hundred people, it would be probably fairly quick and easy. But when you have, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 in a city of only 60,000 that is one of the poorest cities in Ohio, then you're going to have some serious adjustment problems in the short run.
All right,
and there's no provision for it by the government.
So I keep seeing MSNBC and CNN point out that these Haitians are legal immigrants. They're brought here through some program. How is this legal? Is there like an employer that's sponsoring all of them, or is this really like legal and they're just exploiting a loophole, or what?
It's the second part. They're exploiting a loophole. Legal, it kind of means what people want it to mean. They are not people who got a visa and came here through the legal immigration system authorized by Congress. They've either been given something called temporary protected status.
Like for asylum seekers?
It's for people who, let's say you came here from El Salvador and there was an earthquake. They'll let you stay for a couple of years or a couple of months until the country stabilizes and can bring you back. But this program has been grossly abused by several administrations, not just this one. And some of them are just released at the border and told to, show up in court in 6 months, a year, and then you can kind of fight your deportation. And some of them come in under this parole program, which I've written about a lot, is completely twisted beyond what it was ever intended to do. The Biden administration has been paroling 30,000 a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela alone, plus another more than 35,000 from the rest of the world. So, they're legal if you interpret the law that way. But I would say from an immigration standpoint, they are inadmissible migrants who are in some kind of limbo.
Great. So we're flying them in at taxpayer expense. They're getting all kinds of benefits at taxpayer expense, and we're losing our dogs and cats in the meantime. This is working out great, Simon. Why didn't we think of this sooner? Thank you very much for being on the James Show. I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Always a pleasure.
All right, there he is. Simon Hankinson from the Heritage Foundation. Give it up. Another round of applause. Thank you very much. Coming up, you're going to get an update on the great meme war of 2024. The memes around the election, while it's shallow and it's not very complicated, It is effective, and we'll have a good chuckle with it next on The James Show. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I am your host, James Parker. Thank you very much for hanging out with us today. So, I just got gas at Buc-ee's yesterday, and it was about $3 a gallon. Well, that's kind of nice. Will it last? Let's ask Ray Trevino, King Trevino, on The James Show again. How long can this last?
Oh, man, I'm pretty sure we'll see lower prices at least through the election now. I know over here in Fort Worth, we're paying $2.55 or less a gallon.
Wow, that's even better than Buc-ee's, I think. So that's a heck of a coincidence there, RT. It's going to be nice until at least the election. It was pretty bad for 3 years leading up to the election. Is that just a coincidence?
Unfortunately, it's not, James, and thank you as always for having me on. No, if you go back and look historically, the prices have always dropped during the election season. The one asterisk I would put is the 2022 elections, when President Biden actually withdrew from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower the gas prices during that election cycle. But also, I don't want to give it all to the administration. Right now, we do have an abundance of gasoline stockpiled up. As great of a summer as we had of record highs of people traveling and just so many people traveling, we still didn't travel as much as anticipated. And all the refineries that were offline for switching over to winter blends are now coming back online. So again, some of it is that we actually do have a very good supply right now as well.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty good. How about the leases? Has there been any relaxing of the restrictions on new leases?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm blessed to be out in the oil field today and getting ready to drill some more wells. Unfortunately, this administration still has not done a darn thing to help out the oil and gas industry, and more importantly, the oil and gas American worker. This is some group that I just think has waged a war so big against the American people that I can't believe half the country is still thinking the way they are.
Oh, I agree, but we're in Texas. I think most people agree with us down here. How does the oil industry and your friends in the oil patch feel about the specter of a Kamala Harris administration?
We're getting prepared. We do think that if this administration comes back, one, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw inflation go back up immediately, because the rhetoric of killing the oil and gas industry will be back on day one. I'm sorry, but when somebody says that their values have not changed, James, that means you don't switch overnight on what you're saying. So I understand she's been flip-flopping a lot, so we are being prepared for that. The other thing we're being prepared for is OPEC. We're not sure what OPEC's going to do. As we all know, last month they kind of flirted with the market about adding more oil to the market. However, they didn't do it, so we don't know if they're going to be adding more oil to the global economy in 2025 or subtracting it from the global market. And if that's the case, here in America, we're going to have to only continue to do what we're doing, which is produce as much as we can. And again, getting back to the regulations that are not there and that are anti-oil friendly, we need to really start drill, baby, drill sooner than later to start replenishing all the oil that we've been producing for the last 3 years.
All right, RT Trevino, Pecos Country Energy, thanks for being on the James Show. Now go poke some holes out there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, James. Have a great afternoon.
All right, 800-288-9227 if you want to be in on the conversation. Let's try Wolf in Dallas. You're next up on the James Show. What do you think, sir?
Here's my question. In Pennsylvania, the officer confronted the man on the roof, or the boy on the roof, with the rifle, and the boy pointed the gun at him. When he dropped to the ground, why did he not shoot his revolver or his automatic in the air a number of times, put some shots off, make some noise so people would know something was going on? That's what I would have done.
Yeah, great question.
I've never heard anybody mention that before. I think that was his responsibility, or at least put your hand up there and fire a blind shot at him. Do something. Just drop to the ground.
Well, see, Wolf, we still don't have a whole lot of answers, and I don't think we're going to get them. Like, I don't know who shot the guy, where he was stationed at. What was it? Just one shot? Where did it hit him? And they're not real forthcoming with that. There's all the suspicious stuff about how they cremated the body within like 48 hours and they washed off the crime scene. And I haven't seen the evidence. You haven't seen the evidence. There's still a lot I don't know that just doesn't make sense about that, Wolf.
I've not heard about the cremation. I had heard that there were two snipers across the way on different roofs, and one of them was blocked by a tree, but one of them had an open shot, and he's the one that took it and got one shot. That was my understanding, but maybe that's not correct.
Yeah, shouldn't we know this? It's been over 2 months now. We should have answers to these questions, and that's what makes it so suspicious. That's what makes, and you should be suspicious. Thank you very much, Wolf. Let's go to Lewis in Dallas. If you want to be next, 800-288-9227. We're just trying to figure out what's going on together. Lewis, what do you think's going on?
Tell me how they couldn't see the guy on the roof, but yet a black gun barrel sticking out of a bush can be seen.
Yeah, well, they did see the guy on the roof. It's just doubly suspicious that they saw a guy on a roof with a gun and they didn't do anything about it. The speculation we've had on previous episodes of The James Show is maybe they thought that there's a miscommunication and the Secret Service thought that was one of the locals who had decided to go ahead and set up their own post, or maybe the locals thought the Secret Service had put up a guy there and they weren't sure, so let's not go shoot this guy until we can confirm who it is. I mean, that sounds like really Reno 911 level law enforcement, but that's sort of the more likely explanation out of the lack of information that we have.
None of it makes sense.
Not yet. Maybe it will one day, but we certainly don't have enough information now, do we? Thank you very much, Lewis in Dallas. We'll continue the conversation. But coming up next, really cool interview happened this morning. Your governor, Gov Abbott, was on the WBAP morning show talking about the new initiative about gang violence from Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gangs in Texas. They're here. How bad is it? You'll find out next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.